Last section of this unit is called Anaerobic Respiration. Take out your note-taking guide entitled Anaerobic Respirations. And for the do now in the cloud, what I want you to do is use your phones or the internet to research what organisms or what living things use fermentation. What kind of organism is it? Where is it found? Are these organisms useful to humans or harmful? Pause the video now and write a few notes in the cloud. Okay, continuing with our notes. Aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is what we have been talking about up until this point with cellular respiration, meaning with air or with oxygen. Aerobic means with air. So cellular respiration that took glucose, took oxygen to release ATP energy is called a aerobic respiration. Copy this down on the first line there. We're going to be talking about anaerobic respiration. Yeast is one of the organisms that respires anaerobically or gets energy without air. So basically, anaerobic respiration means without air. It is possible to release energy from food without the use of oxygen, and certain organisms do that. Like I said, mainly yeast. They don't need oxygen to get energy. One example is alcoholic fermentation. Yeast and bacteria, they're able to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide while getting their source of energy. So if you look at the illustration here at the bottom, glucose without oxygen gets broken down, but there's a byproduct. You still get carbon dioxide, you still get energy, but alcohol is a byproduct of this process. Copy this down on the line. Pause if you need to. Example number 1. Alcoholic fermentation happens when we make bread. We put yeast in our flour when we make dough, and the yeast, what they do is they eat the sugar or the glucose in the flour, and they break it down, and that makes carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is trapped in these carbon dioxide bubbles, and that's what makes the dough rise, or that's what makes the dough nice and fluffy. So we use yeast to help us rise our bread. If not, we would have only crackers. Thanks to yeast, we have nice fluffy crackers. Now, do you eat? We have nice fluffy bread. Now, do you eat yeast when you eat bread? No, because once we bake it, the yeast dies off, and the carbon dioxide evaporates, and so what you're left with is nice fluffy bread. Example number 2, make sure you write these down on the list there. Yeast and beer. Yeast is what breaks down the sugar when we make beer, and as a byproduct, we make alcohol. Okay, and that's why beer is fizzy, because it has both the alcohol and the carbon dioxide bubbles. Example number 3, wine. Yeast is also able to make wine that's found on the grapes, and this is also called alcoholic fermentation. The yeast eats the sugar in the grapes and makes the alcohol. Okay, if you haven't done so already, copy down the alcoholic fermentation equation. Okay, believe it or not, we're able to produce energy without oxygen. In that situation is called lactic acid fermentation. Say you are working out and you are working out at a fast pace, or you're running very fast, or you're lifting weights, in a heavy succession, our muscles lack oxygen. And what ends up happening is the muscle still needs ATP energy to continue working, but it doesn't have time or it doesn't have the oxygen. So what it does, it breaks it down quickly. You only get two ATP molecules here, but as a byproduct, you get lactic acid, and that's what makes your muscles sore or hurt after a workout. And that's why you breathe heavy even though you finished running or you finished working out, is because now your body needs to replenish the oxygen that it did without. As I was saying, when you're racing, your muscles use up all the oxygen and your body can't keep up. Your lungs can't keep up with the oxygen need from your muscles. So what ends up happening, lactic acid builds up, and you start feeling sore. Even after a race, the oxygen needs to be paid back because you made energy without the use of oxygen. So your body now needs to pay back the oxygen that you waste, that needs to be paid back to make energy. So it's called oxygen depth. And after a race, you breathe heavy and you need to catch your breath. That's because of the oxygen depth, because of the lactic acid fermentation. Okay, so this is a chart showing the overview of the past chapter. Our cells make energy in two ways. Our plant cells trap energy from the sun through photosynthesis. Animal cells through respiration. In the absence of, with oxygen, we get ATP energy in an aerobic process, and without oxygen in an anaerobic process. And two examples of getting energy without oxygen are alcoholic fermentation, like we talked about today, and lactic acid fermentation. Copy this down into the chart, pause it so that you can copy it properly. As an exit ticket, you have to answer these following questions in analyzing anaerobic respiration. Number one, how is anaerobic respiration similar to aerobic respiration? Number two, how are they different? Number three, what is alcoholic fermentation? And give one example how we use it everyday life. Number four, explain why an athlete continues to breathe faster and deeper after finishing a race. If you need to answer these questions or are confused, please review the video again.